Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson sat in the grand chamber of the Supreme Court, her gaze steady and unreadable, as Representative Jasmine Crockett approached the podium. The room was hushed, a silence so heavy it seemed to press against the marble walls. Crockett had told reporters outside that Jackson's Harvard pedigree wouldn't intimidate her. "The court needs truth, not theatrics," she declared. But as she adjusted the microphone, her bright purple suit vivid against the sea of black robes, the atmosphere shifted. Everyone sensed this would be no ordinary hearing. The first interruption was already looming. Crockett began with confidence, her voice projecting across the chamber. "My grandmother once stood 6 hours in the blistering Texas sun just to cast her vote. These laws would have silenced her voice." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the gallery. But before Crockett could press her point further, Justice Jackson leaned forward. "Counsel," she interrupted, her tone sharp but measured. "This court examines constitutional questions, not personal anecdotes. Which standard of review are you arguing for, strict scrutiny or intermediate scrutiny?" The freshman congresswoman hesitated. The silence afterward was deafening. The first clash had begun. Crockett tried to recover, flashing a confident smile. "Of course, Justice Jackson. But it's vital to highlight the real-world impact of these laws before we—" Jackson cut her off again. "Counsel, the so-called technicalities are what determine constitutionality. Strict or intermediate scrutiny, choose." The second interruption landed like a gavel strike. Observers exchanged quick glances. Even seasoned court veterans sensed a storm brewing. Crockett shifted, her purple jacket catching the light, but the confidence from outside seemed to waver. Jackson's face remained impassive, her insistence on rigor setting the tone. Crockett wasn't debating politicians now. She was in Jackson's court. The interruptions kept coming. "Strict scrutiny applies, Your Honor," Crockett answered quickly, then added, "especially given the racial impact, something you surely understand as the first black woman on this court." The temperature in the chamber seemed to plummet. Jackson's eyes narrowed. "My background is irrelevant here," she replied, her voice cutting through the silence. "Do not mistake identity for argument. We deal in law, not assumptions." Gasps flickered through the gallery. Crockett, suddenly rattled, fumbled her notes. What had started as a bold performance was unraveling fast. The lesson was brutal. Emotion alone would not survive in this arena. Crockett pressed forward, clinging to statistics. "Black voter participation dropped by 17% after these laws," she declared. Jackson leaned in, striking again. "That statistic isn't in the record. Counsel, cite where it appears in the district proceedings." Crockett shuffled through papers, her composure cracking. "I can't provide that citation," she stammered. Jackson's reply was swift. "This court requires evidence, not assertions." The third interruption cut deeper than the first two. Around the chamber, justices shifted in their seats. Even those sympathetic to Crockett's cause could sense the imbalance. She was being tested, and Jackson wasn't letting up. By the fourth interruption, it was clear Justice Jackson wasn't an ally to be leaned on, but a gatekeeper demanding precision. Crockett's voice wavered as she insisted the broader point still stood. Jackson, unyielding, cut her off again. "We need citations, not generalizations." The gallery stirred. Whispers of disbelief floated through the ornate chamber. Crockett, once the darling of cable news panels, now looked cornered under the relentless scrutiny of a jurist unmoved by spectacle. Each exchange felt like a clash of worlds, political theater colliding with constitutional rigor, and Crockett was losing ground quickly. Then came the shift. Crockett paused, inhaled deeply, and removed her purple jacket, folding it neatly on the podium. The gesture was small but symbolic. She was shedding the politician's armor. Her tone dropped, slower, deliberate. "Let me address the constitutional issues directly," she began, voice steadier now. For the first time, she cited precedent with precision. Arlington Heights, Louisiana versus United States, Brnovich. Justices who had dismissed her earlier rhetoric now leaned forward. Even Jackson's expression softened from stern disapproval to cautious attention. Crockett was no longer grandstanding. She was stepping into the role of serious constitutional advocate. But Jackson wasn't finished. "Counsel, you've cited precedent. Now explain the test you believe applies, step by step." The demand was surgical, leaving no room for evasion. Crockett met her eyes. Intent, effect, and disproportionate burden. She replied, her cadence firm, no longer rattled. Jackson interrupted for the 7th time, pressing, "And how do you distinguish Brnovich?" This was the crucible. Crockett straightened her notes, then spoke with surprising clarity. Because Brnovich narrowed Section 2, but it never erased the Constitution's command against racial discrimination. That's the line we defend. The chamber stilled. Everyone sensed the showdown's climax. Justice Jackson leaned back, silent at last. The pause felt heavier than the interruptions that came before. Crockett seized it. "Your Honors, this isn't about anecdotes or abstractions. It's about whether America honors its promise of equal citizenship." Her words echoed off the marble walls. The justices exchanged glances. Clerks scribbled furiously. Then, Jackson leaned forward once more, her 8th interjection landing like a thunderclap. "Counsel, if your test is correct, then states cannot hide behind procedure to disenfranchise. That is a profound claim." The gallery gasped. Crockett's final point had pierced the courtroom like lightning. The silence after Jackson's words was electric. Crockett steadied herself, knowing this was her last chance. "Yes, Your Honor," she replied, her voice resolute. "Because democracy does not die in darkness. It dies in paperwork, in technicalities, in quiet exclusions that strip millions of their voice. The Constitution does not allow that." For once, no interruption came. Even Jackson, so fierce until now, simply nodded, as though acknowledging the weight of the moment. The gavel would fall later, but the moral verdict was already clear. Crockett's 8th point hadn't just survived. It had shaken the chamber itself.